Hi all, welcome to the next edition of Amnic Cast. Today we have Suresh Kumar, who heads the platform and infrastructure at Apna. I haven't got a chance to work with him in person, but I have had a lot of my colleagues who have worked with him have talked about like the kind of scale that he has seen, which not many of us would have seen. So today we have an interesting conversation with him in terms of his journey, the kind of scale that he has seen, and the kind of platforms he is building, and we will touch upon how some of the Gen AI use cases he's adopting. Welcome, Suresh.
Thank you, Satya, and it's absolute honor to be here.
Awesome. Let's start with your journey, right? Why don't you give your journey in terms of how you started off and where are you currently in?
Sure. I like to call myself an accidental engineer because I didn't want to become an engineer, but here I am. And when I joined my first job at Infosys, right, it was more supposed to be a temporary thing. I wanted to be an IS. Okay, so I thought, I will prepare for that. But I loved it so much, and I think somewhere I was fortunate that I got to work with the Infosys, research and development unit called Set Labs, right? And we were doing some applied research in field of performance engineering, and that's where I get to start into field of performance engineering. And those were days when there was no Black Friday, it was more like Christmas shopping, and there was no cloud, no virtualization. Challenge was, how do you scale your system, or how do you right size your capacity so that you can meet that workload, and you don't get to do it again, right? You have to get it right the first time, right? So from there, building frameworks, building tooling for monitoring. I remember, we built a tool called Big Eye, which can monitor, any system, whether it's HPUX, Linux, Windows. So from there, I wrote those agents for, getting the performance data at a very small footprint. From there, moved to Oracle, and I think that was a very pivotal moment for me. What I learned there was, that how the world is changing, right? Again, fortunately, worked with a team which was a startup acquired by Oracle in telecom space. And the kind of automation we had, kind of, I would say the CI/CD, while we didn't call it at that time, it become, kind of popular later. We were doing that at that point of time, and that was a great learning experience. Again, that was a time when Oracle has acquired Sun, Java, all the hardware. So got to work with Solaris, different kind of systems. I think first level of virtualization in Solaris, there are multiple things. How do you virtualize? So that was very interesting. And the cloud era was just starting. Big data was there. I moved to Informatica for a short time, because big data and Informatica seems like, a good option. And I learned Hadoop, scale TPC benchmark 13x in a period of 3 months, right? And that was a great journey. But then moved to Walmart, and Walmart at a point where Walmart was actually investing a lot in competing with in a retail space, in e-commerce space with Amazon, and a small team in India, which I think grow very fast. Even when I was there, and it's like much bigger. And Walmart was starting a multi-year journey to move to a private cloud. So Walmart can't go on AWS, right? I'm talking about a time where there were no microservices or containers or Docker, right? Or no Kubernetes. So virtual machines, only viable cloud was AWS, and obviously, it's a competitor, right? So Walmart built its own private cloud, okay, based upon OpenStack, and then we also moved to a service-oriented architecture. And I was one of the performance engineer helping the local teams in India, and mostly supply chain teams like order management, inventory management, and seeing that transformation, being part of it was, like very different, right? How do we start? Like, we were building a whole new system while we were running the existing system, right? And think about scale of Black Friday, right? The traffic will spike like, 40-50x within a second or within a minute, right? So how do you handle those kind of spikes? How do you optimize the whole stack? Whole stack in terms of not only your application, but your virtualization engine, your network and everything. So great learning experience. From there, and then one shift happened at that point of time. I moved to from a performance engineering role to a more what we call SRE nowadays, okay, site reliability engineering. We used to call it operation analytics and research team. So that was great. I My team was responsible for managing whole Walmart e-commerce supply chain, okay, and the software part of it. So very hectic, I would say, very tense moments, very intense, those 2 years which where I worked at. But again, defining moments. And from there I moved to Target, sorry, EY. Before that, build a platform on top of Azure with a great set of people. And then from there, move to Target in a production engineering role, which is a bigger, SRE plus developer experience plus, other different kind of things, which we were doing, network reliability and many more things. And then I am with Apna for 2 years now, and I am handling platform engineering, DevOps, SRE, security, incident management, IT, lot of things. Right? It's just very interesting, given the pace which we work on, and the kind of problem we are solving for India. So, very different experience, in a fast moving startup from all the enterprises. But I think one thing has remained common, that there is always learning. And, the fundamentals remain the same, right? You have the same challenge, but, how do you approach it? It changes with time, because in today's world, the way our industry is moving, it's like warp speed, right? Which what used to take 10, 15 years earlier, for a paradigm shift now happens almost a year, right? So yeah, that's about my journey, Satya.
No, awesome. I think from being in the research side of performance engineering and building tools to being part of actually building IDPs and then moving to SRE, it's an amazing stuff. But what actually motivates you to go through this journey, right? Like you have seen different parts of it, like performance. I've seen people only on performance. Then you have been on performance and then moved into SRE to building platform engineering and IDP kind of stuff, right? What motivates you to take these roles?
I think it's been, two main factor, right? One is I always try to look at the bigger picture, right? That where we will be in next few years, right? And second part also, which plays a big role in this mentorship, right? I think I have been fortunate enough to have great mentors, who have helped me, make those right decisions, right? And it's not like, I made all the decisions, right? That okay, hey, from performance I should move to SRE, right? But it was more of like, okay, hey, there are different things which we can do, or this is how it's going to look like. So seeing the bigger picture, and figuring out that, I think doing a lot of things, figuring out what works, what's not going to work, right? Like I can tell you, I was very good at performance engineering, right? Not only running performance tests, but tuning, optimizing system, scaling them, figuring out, and during my Walmart days we realized that, hey, it's good, right? But very soon we will not have enough time to performance test. We just can't, say, okay, hey, when something is being deployed, we know, okay, how it's going to work. And also that, you can just test this much, you can create workload, characterize it, and create scenarios, and you can see, okay, how my system behave. Things will break down,
Yep,
because
yep.
your users, how your system works, is very different. And then it's not like, hey, you are running a 6 months project where, you start with, waterfall model, and you are deploying after 6 months. People were deploying, right, every day. I remember, in Walmart, when I joined, right, the site will be deployed once in 2 months, right? But when I was leaving, I could see that we were doing around 600, 700 deployments a day. Obviously
Wow.
this is the architecture, different services, but that helps you bring out those features super fast to your users, right? End users. And this what competition is doing. So I was always being called upon when something will go wrong into production, right? While it was not part of my job description, right, but I worked closely with the teams, and I was with them in trenches, right, figuring out, hey, what's happening? Is it with the database? Is it with, something to do with network, or even very strange issues, right? OpenStack releases a new version for their Neutron. I think Neutron. I don't remember the compute layer, and it supports memory ballooning, and our GC response time suddenly becomes very high. The same application, not as much change, right? Figuring those out, right? Cassandra cluster running very fine, and all of a sudden it needs 10 time of capacity or the same workload. So what changed, right? So those kind of things, kind of led to me, okay, hey, it's not enough, right? What we need to do is, when we are moving this fast, right, we need to have a different approach. And obviously, it's not like we were facing the problem. The whole industry was facing the problem, and SRE, or DevOps, or whatever you call it, right? Those things were being tried. And I was lucky that, I got that opportunity also, because it's not only that, hey, I want to do this, right? There should be an opportunity. and that opportunity came, and I took it. I had the courage to accept that opportunity. And yeah, it was it was hard, it was very difficult. I would not say I was successful from day one. It was a learning experience. And so that's how performance to SRE. But then the same thing happened in other areas, right? Okay, from SRE to platform, because when you work closely with developer and see, okay, hey, I don't think we anybody build code or write code so that it can go down. Okay, we all have good intention, but most of the time there is so much cognitive load on people or developers that they tend to they leave something out, right? So how do we help them? And and I could see that we are doing so many things, right? Your developer is supposed to do so many things, while mostly their role is to write business logic, right? To build those features which user can use. But then there was Kafka, there was logging, there was monitoring, there was caching and whatnot, right? They have to monitor their system. So, and then Walmart was doing a great job, even at that time in 2012, 2013. We had a platform team, but the focus was mostly on like building caching, authentication, IAM, and all those things. So how do we help users? How do we help developer, right? And that the same process was happening with DevOps. And from DevOps it makes perfect logical sense that how do we get to that point where developers have enough time, we can reduce their cognitive load so that they can focus entirely on building features, and we can abstract, make it easy for them, everything. Easier said than done, but I think it's a journey, and the whole industry is going through that.
Awesome. I think that we can now move into, like, how do you do this, right? Like, the platform engineering that you're building at Apna in terms of IDP to help developer reduce the cognitive load, right? Uh, how do you envision it, and what do you actually do in it, and what are some of the benefits you have seen in that?
Yeah, I think again that's been very interesting. To be honest, when I decided, when I got an opportunity at Apna, and I said, decide, I will join in next 2 months. While I was working closely with the team, I have worked with them previously, so there was a very good understanding. I had preconception in my mind that, okay, hey, this is what platform means. This is what you should do, and like this is what Google does. This is what Facebook does. This is what that big company does, right? And when I joined, I quickly realized that that's not what we need, right? We have our own unique set of challenges, and I think we already were doing a good number of things there, right? So I can give you one example. Team has already built a library, which anybody can use, and they will automatically, kind of do a lot of stuff like, building your, we use Datadog, let's say, so integration with your logs, your traces, your APM, your metrics, right? And you don't have to write even a single line of code. And then that has helped everyone significantly. So similar way, we figured out that, okay, hey, here we don't maybe need today, a IDP immediately, but where are the problem? What are the problem developers are facing? And the best way is to go and talk to them. Even we were remote, talking to people, figuring out that, okay, hey, this is what they need. This is where they spend time, which we can help them, and make sure that they have, they can spend that time somewhere else better. One example I would give you: we were growing, we were, like, we had explosive growth. We were growing in terms of scale. I remember from 10 million user in 6 months we reached 35 million users. Okay, we launched from 20 cities to 60 cities. Okay, but we were also growing as a team, as engineers, right? So how do we make it easier for them? And when people are building microservices, they have to do a lot of stuff, so we automated a lot of things, right? So you don't need to come to us for say, okay, hey, I'm building a microservices, I need a repo in Bitbucket, I need this database or this thing, I need to do this secret management, or I need a namespace in Kubernetes, or do I need a separate Kubernetes cluster for myself, or do I go and use common Kubernetes clusters? So all those things we kind of worked and kind of abstracted it from developers, and they just go and say, okay, hey, I want to do this, and everything, the whole, I would say, the whole wireframe will be for them available, and they can just start coding. And to be honest, that concept, in Target, I learned, and what Target used to call midnight developers. That, hey, if somebody has got an idea and they want to build a service, they should not need to talk to a DevOps team or a platform team, right? So the idea is that, okay, how do we make it as much as self-service. The developer can solve their own problem. How do we, and obviously I know we always talk about frictionless, platforms, internet developer platforms and all those things, but that's a difficult task to do. And in a startup, you don't get time to do that, okay?
Mm.
Because there are business things which you have to do. You have to support the business, and when you are growing so fast, right? So that was one thing, that okay, how can we reduce the friction every day, every month, quarter on quarter, rather than focusing on something, a big bang thing, and we say, okay, hey, we are going to spend energy on this, while the team just moves away because it is going to take 6 months or 10 months, right? So focus on the thing which we can do every day, where we can help developer reduce their cognitive load. So I would say we have good success, but there is a lot to be done even now, okay? And but that keeps on changing, because the way we change, the circumstances are changing, right? So it keeps on changing, so you have to adapt, and you have to actually see that, rather than doing something, okay, or rather than attaching yourself to a solution, you look at the problem, and you focus on that problem, that okay, hey, can I solve this problem, how fast I can solve, and not like, okay, I need to solve the problem entirely. That might not be possible always, right? Can I make it 20% easier? Can I shave off 10 seconds? Like, it's like, hey, my build is taking 2 hours, right? So if I make it a project that I'm gonna make completed in 10 minutes, no, can I make it 1 hour, 1 hour 50 minutes today, and 1 hour 40 minutes tomorrow? So that's the sort of thing. And obviously the world has changed in last 2 years, right? Cost optimization is one of the big deal, right? So how do we help developer do things more efficiently? So that has been the focus of the platform team at Apna. But yes, enabling, equipping developer to focus more on what they are supposed to do, rather than extra things, the cognitive load thing which they have to do, is that has been our focus.
Awesome. I just want to take one step back, right? I think I have seen IDPs and platform engineering being done at large scale companies, right? Like you talked about few of them, but you said in a startup you don't get time to build that kind of a stuff, right? I just want to understand your overall in a at a startup, right? When I don't have all the time in the world to build the ideal IDP, what constitutes a quick one so that you could still take the cognitive load away, right? You talked about all the merits of it, but can you tell, like, hey, put a Kubernetes, have an Argo CD or something? Like, what do you think of, like, here's a quick version of an IDP that a startup can put so that the developer's cognitive load can come down?
Yeah, absolutely. See, you can start with something very simple, right? Okay, how do you? So obviously, I'm considering that you already have a good CI/CD platform, right? Because that's a must, right? And I think without a good CI/CD, right? But you have to check, like, how what it takes time. Where do developers spend the time? So you have to just go and talk to them, right? So as I mentioned, we built that library, that okay, hey, developer were spending a lot of time in kind of creating monitoring dashboards, or integrating monitoring with their application, right? So we made it very simple, right? So you shaved off, like, say, when you are building a new service, maybe 1 hour or 2 hours of work, right? So that's one part. Second thing, how do you help them make decisions, right? That okay, hey, how what I'm gonna do for my, say, my streaming needs or my messaging needs, right? Do they need to worry about so many things, right? Even building a small wrapper on whatever infra services you are providing them, so that they don't have to go and understand deep. Because see, it's not only about using thing, right? When they have to make decisions, that okay, hey, how do I configure, what should be my timeout, what should be my like, say, okay, hey, when I have to kind of use circuit breakers or something, right? How do you help them make those decisions fast? Because when they have to think about that, that's more of a context switch. And if they have to reach out to somebody, so how do you abstract out those things, right? Even deployment, right? If I am gonna size an application at a deployment on Kubernetes, right? How can I make decisions, how much CPU memory request limit which I need, right? And obviously, yeah, given that you are already managing Kubernetes for them, they don't have to worry about, right? Or if they have to use configuration like secrets and all those things, make it very simple for them. So I think always you start with the problem, or maybe you go and talk to people, okay, hey, or ideal case, I would say, I will just go and sit with the developer and just watch them, what they are doing, and kind of time, right? Obviously, it's not possible in today's world, but when you go and talk to them and figure out This is where they are spending that extra time. They are not writing business feature, but they are trying to solve another problem, right? And you start from there, and that's one. So these are few cases. I hope that answer your question,
Yeah,
Satya.
yeah, no, yeah, makes sense. And recently, you're talking about how Gen AI improves the productivity on the platform engineering, right? What are your thoughts, and are you doing something in terms of improving the productivity through having Gen AI as a co-pilot kind of a stuff?
Yeah, I think to be honest, if you would have asked me this question 6 months back, I would say I was very skeptical that okay, hey, is there a utility? Is there a utility of LLMs or Gen AI in our space, right? But and then we tried solving this problem, right? We all know about we document a lot of stuff, right? Okay, this is how, and when I say okay, hey, developer needs to know that okay, I don't need to worry about this. I do X, Y, Z, and you mostly first thing you do is put a document, a wiki, okay, and say go read this wiki and you can do that. But there are many problems that wiki goes out of date or developers don't even know how do you make them searchable, right? And when you are writing that, you are writing it from your point of view. So what we have seen that when something goes wrong, okay, people will reach out to us. So we have a on call handle on Slack. People will reach out, hey, on call, I'm having this issue. Let's say, take a very simple example. My build has failed. Okay, now build might fail for X number of reasons. Okay, and while sometime it's very easy for them to know, okay, hey, I know the problem, something I have done wrong, I will fix it. But sometime when it's related to infrastructure, developers are not very sure. And most of the time these are solved problems. But again, when you are growing fast, more people are onboarded. It's not always a you get a time to train those people, right? Or they get a time to go through the documentation, or they haven't seen the problem, right? So we have to chip in, the team person who on call, and then sometime if you are working on something priority incident or something, right, people have to wait. Now think about build failed. Developer has to make a context switch. They have to wait for somebody to be available to see that Slack message. Obviously it's a priority zero, they will call, but like say okay, I can wait, right? And the person comes and look at the logs and figure out, and they say, hey, you have to just do this, right? Why didn't you read this wiki document? But that takes time, and that is taking time away from developer, right? On working on feature. So we say, how do we reduce it? First thing we tried, let's educate them. Okay, but you can do only so much, right? And then we tried building a bot few months back. Didn't work out because while it gives you canned responses, right, but it's not adopted, right? And then we realize, okay, can we use Gen AI to do that? And people are doing it for business reasons, right? For variety of use case. We have a good amount of troubleshooting documents, and it also has understanding from internet, from the web, that how Kubernetes works, how Google Cloud works, or how different tools work, right? And it can create a very good human language response, right? So I would not say we yes, we did improve a lot of our documentation to make it more accessible so that developers can follow it, and then use LLMs, basically retrieval augmented journey generation, where it goes through that documentation, and then it can respond to developer. And in few weeks we have seen improvement up to 30%, where people are able to solve their own problems. Yes, we still have a lot of plan that how do we connect it to our logs, how do we connect it to say Stack Overflow, where unique kind of problems people can it can figure out and guide developer into the right direction. So yeah, I think it has been Gen AI has been transformational. And I'm sure it can change the way how do we work. We just started using Duet AI from GCP, and reading logs has become super easy, right? Making sense of it. So I think it's more about efficiency. It's more about doing things which would take a lot of time for you, and sometime you have to go through a lot of struggles. It's gonna make it super easy, and then we can focus on more bigger things. So, and that's how I think Gen AI is looking very promising.
Any other areas other than the chatbot that you are considering the next stuff now that you have seen success in this? What are some of the other areas you think that it might be of help?
So I think it has already helped Apna in considerable way, right? And as I said, 6 months back, 1 year back, I was okay. No, this is not for us, right? But then there are problems we have already solved, which are very very, I think very difficult problem, right? You don't have a solution, right? And one of the problem I can tell you, right? So we almost 600K employers hire from us, right? And So our problem is very unique, right, in the industry, in the recruitment industry, if you talk about. So we have like a use case where, okay, hey, we have companies with similar names, right, in India, right? So if you talk about, say, Sterling is a developer, Sterling is a e-commerce company, also a software company. Sterling is like so many different names. Now, how do we figure out what company is this? And obviously our target group is mostly, people who are like, medium skilled, right? Their language skills are not so great, right? So our ops team were struggling, or how our, I would say, Apna's key, unique selling point is that how do we match job seekers with, jobs, right? So that information is all about relevancy, right? What job do you see on your screen when you log into Apna, right? And based upon your profile, based upon your activity history, so many things, right? 1.2 million companies, while ops team was struggling, okay, hey, people will complain, or we will go and make changes, right? Or we are not even aware that the category of this company is different. This is not a real estate developer, this is a software company, or this is, actually a accounting company, not a banking or BFSI company, right? And LLM solved this problem for us in just mere days, right? And that was an experiment we ran. And obviously, it's not like the first time we hit it, it worked. We have to learn how to prompt it properly, what kind of data we provide, how do we take the data, process the data. And think about it, we envisage that it's going to take us at least 6 months, 20 people team working on this, doing research, right? And we sold it in a matter of week. So a lot of problems Gen AI is helping us to solve. Yes, it doesn't seem like glamorous things which we saw on internet, chatbots which can do banking, which can do so much stuff for you. But these are some real sticky problem which does have a big business impact for us, which Gen AI is helping us to solve.
Awesome. I think we have touched a lot on technology aspect and then your journey. Now, one of the biggest things while building these technology is still in your hands, getting it adopted across your organization, right? That's still everybody would have their own way of doing it, right? And then you suddenly enforce a standard through, hey, you can't access Kafka through this, now use my library or something. How do you actually do that part, right? Because you are building a platform and you need to make sure that the adoption of that is there, right? um, can you talk about like what is your secret sauce to making it happen?
See, to be honest, I think this is still a problem which I grapple with, almost every day. Okay, so it's not like there is a playbook or recipe. There are some tips which I can share. I think the first thing is making sure you are solving the right problem. Okay, making sure that this is, because I have seen and I have been guilty of that. Building stuff which developers just don't care about. Okay, you do something, and you think it's going to change, but they just don't see the value. So first make sure you are building the right stuff, which actually helps them. But the second part is also that you have to earn their trust. And I think once you earn their trust, right, it's very simple, but earning that trust is difficult and a time consuming process. I remember when I first joined Upna, or even in other companies, right, people will look at whatever we do skeptically, right? Is there a value? And you have to demonstrate that value. And I would say another tip is, don't think that, okay, hey, the success criteria is that whatever small thing or big thing I have built is gonna be adopted by the whole organization in a single go. No, I think that's the wrong approach. That's more prone to failures. What you should try to do is actually first make sure that you are documenting it. And the second thing is, and being platform engineering, I think the engineering part, we also write a lot of code, build a lot of features, right? We use our own applications, we use our own system which we build, so that we can also test it out, right? And then we give it to developers. Start with one or two teams, right? And that will also give you time to iterate, because while we might be solving the right problem, we might not be solving in the right way, or making it available to people in the right way what they expect, right? And have that learning, and then gradually start keep on increasing. And while I think it's easy in a lot of top down enterprise application where it can be a mandate from the a VP engineering or CTO, in startups is very difficult, right? So that's where I think talking to developer, and it's like how you know you build a new product in the market as a startup and sell and convince people that okay, use it, it's good for you. I think it's the same kind of approach. I think every platform engineering team is a startup within their organization. They have to act like a founder. They have to act like, is you have to go and sell it out to people, convince them this is going to help, provide them that help, be responsive. I think don't do too many things that okay, hey, no, this is my priority. You say okay, I'm gonna drive adoption of this particular application or this particular library or this feature, and when people come to you that okay, I am having this issue, you fix that immediately. I think that build that trust, and that's how you do that. It's difficult, but it's worthwhile. I would say it's very satisfying when you see that this actually is happening and solving a problem.
Awesome. I think it's amazing that how you actually think and make it adaptable, right? Uh, I think you have touched upon quite a few topics from performance engineering to running Kubernetes in an efficient way. So before we close, I want the audience to hear from you at least two or three uh, things that they can actually take it back in terms of either optimizing or running Kubernetes efficiently. What will those be, right?
I think, I kind of hate these silver bullets, okay? Because when you give those silver bullets and people think that okay, this is gonna solve some problem, right? I think it's very, very contextual, right? That depending upon your context, how it's gonna work, right? I think the first most important thing, when you are using something like Kubernetes, you need to make sure that you are using it for the right thing. Okay. So, if the way you are building your application, okay, you know, uh, you have to essentially make sure that, how you are going to deploy, like your basic architecture needs to be right, right? So having the right, setup for your Kubernetes, like today, mostly people use, Kubernetes in a cloud environment, right? So how are you going to deploy it, right? How are you going to secure your endpoints? That's one thing, right? But based upon regions, based upon zones, how are you going to distribute your workload? And sizing your requests and limits, right? That's the most important part. But what I think people actually struggle and which causes a lot of incident is that you are not using the auto scaling capabilities of Kubernetes easily. And we use GKE, right? So they provide four different levels of scalabilities, right? So one thing is, yes, always do experimentation, but yeah, if you do not have time to experiment, observe your application in production and make sure you are giving the right CPU and memory limits. But not only that, Kubernetes also hides sometimes problems, right? That's I think the bad part about it. I remember the days of VMs where if let's say you have a memory leak, right? Application one by one, your servers will go down and your application will go down, and then you will fix it. But Kubernetes just sees unresponsive, health check or liveness probe is failing, they will just create and it will hide a problem for you, right? Which can become a. So I think putting right kind of observability, when and observability can mean different things to different people, but what I would say, having the proper signals, right? And the proper signal in terms of make sure that you create some kind of business metrics for your app, right? Or if it's not possible, you can't write that code, you ensure that from database, from whatever your application is doing, you can derive some business metrics, monitor that, and create alerts on that, right? So that's one part. I think we miss a lot of time. While you will find thousands of tips and tricks to monitor and deploy on Kubernetes and scale it, I think it's very important that we look at the business side of any application we are building and have the right metrics and alert on them. Build monitoring for everything. You need to have dashboard, everything under the sun you can put a dashboard. Alert should be on your business metrics. I think that's one key lesson which I have seen, because I can tell you, I spoke about that joining SRE team at Walmart, and first day when I joined that team, they added me to DL, and my phone just crashed because there were 60,000 email in 1 hour, all
Wow.
alerts. So, and that happens almost everywhere, every organization where I joined, right? So, alert only on business metric. Everything else under the sun, you build, metric dashboards. So these are few learnings. But yeah, I think there are a lot of things which you can do in Kubernetes. But uh, at my experience is these things does matter a lot.
Awesome, Suresh. It's a pleasure actually talking to you. Thanks a lot for coming on this and then sharing your thoughts. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Satya.
Yes.
Bye bye.